we'll at least have that. There you go, Steve.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Well, we'd like to start our call off as we always do with our signature message. Every one of us here in this Zoom meeting can say that I'm a part of a growing team of entrepreneurs with a shared mission to protect and empower 2 million families and small businesses with Legal Shield's network of law firms and world-class identity theft services. What we do matters, and we are looking for help. And as always, I'll remind you that you want to keep that where you're going to see it frequently, memorize it, internalize it, and that verbiage is there for you whenever a situation arises. With that, it is my pleasure to turn the Zoom room over to the only gentleman here from the state of New Hampshire, the founder of Success Partners International, Millionaire Club member, coach, mentor, and friend, Mr. John Drennan. It's all yours.
Steve. Steve, thank you so much. Thanks for getting on early. For those that were on early, we got to liven up to some Van Halen and had a group of us on that were chatting. So just a reminder, every Wednesday and every Sunday, Steve's got the room open 10 minutes before check-in with some music. And then every Sunday after our Zoom, we've got an inspirational video. Every Wednesday, like tonight, we finish with a training type of video. So great value in these Zooms. And Steve, thanks so much for everything you do. So coming out of the event, you know, and during the event this last weekend, which I know we continue talking about, and there's a reason for that. And I think you all know what it is. And most of you took in some or most of the event. But, you know, our business really is three things when you boil it down. It's showing up. And the bigger the event, the bigger the impact. And so this weekend was a big showing up deal. Secondly, it's activity. Activity is the kind of heartbeat of the business. And then it's personal development. Jim Rohn always said, if you want more, become more. For things to give change, you must change. And so activity, you know, our business results come from what we do and how we do what we do. That's where our results come from. That memberships come from what we do, and associates come from what we do. But how we do what we do and what we do is based on who we are. And that's where the personal development and the showing up comes in. Because, for example, this last weekend, we showed up and we got better. And we had a big dose of personal development in that showing up. So we got better. And so in my case, the event influenced me a lot in the reminder of the value of personal development. And part of it was Don Yeager and getting his book, Greatness, the 16 Characteristics of Champions, getting that book before the event and reading it. And getting me really in that mindset, and then seeing him and hearing him and the amazing stories. I mean, the Warwick Dunn story, just incredible. All those stories and all the stories in his book, if you haven't read it. And then I pulled out a book most of you are familiar with. 9 Little Words to Change Your Results, from our very own Lynn Schuster-Williams. Most of you own it. Most of you have read it. Some of you have read it twice. Some of you give it away as a gift. And we're so blessed to have Lynn as part of this organization, contributing in so many ways. But I read this 2 days ago, and it is a quick read. I mean, you can read it in a morning or in an afternoon, and you don't need the whole morning or the whole afternoon, but there's so much value in this book. And so I got thinking about, because so often we hear people say, up until now, or they say something like, hey, I'm stuck. And then they go, wait, up until now, I have felt stuck. Because so many of us know the first 3 words of the 9 Little Words, up until now. And so I got thinking about, in my own case, as I was looking at, where am I stuck, or where am I feeling limited, or where am I wanting to break through? I got thinking about, let's get Lynn's book out and review the 9 steps. And for me, it's up until now, I've not been platinum on a consistent basis. But we all have up until nows. Our up until nows sound like this in Legal Shield typically. I've been stuck at director. I've not been in PC. I'm not a recruiter. I've not been consistent. I don't track. My activity's inconsistent. These are the kinds of statements we hear. So we've all got these up until nows that we could apply. And so I thought, let's bring Lynn on here tonight. Let's work through this. Let's talk about this. So Lynn, I want to make sure you're there with us. And I want to start by, I think most people on the Zoom know who you are, but if not, you know, Lynn's been in Legal Shield about 6 years. She's been I'm going to let you say your role in the church, Lynn, but a sales coach, a speaker, obviously an author, and has an MBA. So let me just first of all welcome you, Lynn, and do share also what your role has been in churches.
Thanks, John. First of all, I want to say I love looking at your book because here's a clue, y'all. Did you see? Hold your book up, John. Look at all those tags, and I have matching tags, right? So there's a clue. I loved that when you held it up. I was like, yes. So my background obviously came from corporate sales, but while I was in corporate sales, I had a side gig as a certified conflict resolution trainer and facilitator for Unity churches, which led me to a decade of serving as a part-time spiritual leader of a Unity church that I had served as a conflict resolution consultant. And then I was a guest speaker and consultant for many other churches along the way, John. So that's what you're thinking of in terms of my role at the church. And for our team, I've always loved getting to play that role at our sacred service at Summer Blast. So that's a part of that that's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, and anyone who's attended those live or this last August, that amazing Sunday sacred service, you know Lynn's no amateur. I mean, that was incredible, that Sunday morning, and many of you were part of that. So let's get to the book though, Lynn, and yeah, I've got tags here, and the first one comes from chapter 1, and what I want to do is lay some groundwork here and turn this into a workshop, but just laying some groundwork in chapter 1, she asks this question: will you aim for change by design or live by default? You know, that's a choice, design or default. Chapter 2, the title is What You Think Matters. And, you know, Lynn talks a lot about our self-communication and the thoughts we have. And thoughts are so powerful and words are so powerful. And then in chapter 3, thought is the most fundamental element in the creative process. So again, the power of thoughts. And so those first 3 words, up until now. So Lynn, I know in the book, you give an example of up until now. You say, I have worried about paying for college and my daughter having the freedom to choose the right school to meet her needs. So let's back up a little bit, and can you maybe talk a little more about the significance of these first 3 words, and then maybe how it came into a play on this example you use in the book?
Absolutely. So, you know, up until now is a remarkable phrase. It interrupts our old self-talk. So if we've been saying, I'm not good at something, or we've been worried about something, I'm worried about how this is going to turn out, or I'm worried I won't be good enough, or I'm not talented enough, or I can't fill in the blank, right? Whatever it is in your mind, up until now, interrupts the old pattern of thinking and says, it acknowledges that's how it's been. That's why it's so much more powerful than just an affirmation by itself. Because if I'm affirming something that is the opposite of what I'm really feeling, like in this example, John, I was worried about my daughter Morgan being able to go to the right school for her. She had physical limitations. She had academic aspirations, and it just needed to be exactly the right school. And we had zero college savings. So you can just imagine as a parent that I didn't want her to come out of school loaded down with a lot of debt. And I had no idea how to make that happen for her. And so I had, if instead of saying up until now, I had just been saying, Morgan's going to go to the right school, and, you know, this is all going to work out. And then the worry part of me that was active would have undone all that to some degree, right? It would have, but up until now allows me to go, that really is how it has been. I acknowledge the challenge of the past, but I also imply the possibility of the future being different, all in 3 words, right? So in 3 words, I've interrupted my old pattern of thinking and laid down the possibility that from now on, it's going to be different. So up until now, I was worried about how Morgan was going to go to the right school without incurring a lot of debt. And that just, if you say the one thing that you've been thinking, I've been worried, you know, you can feel the constricted energy of that. But the second you say, well, up until now, I've been worried, you can feel the energy of that just relax, right? It's just an incredible tool, those 3 little words. And that's one of the reasons that those 3 words get used more than all the other. And I want to tell just a quick story, John. Today I was on an LOJ event of mine called Wise Women Wednesday. And there was a woman named Holly there. And Holly put into the chat, Lynn's book has changed my life. I read it every day. And on her arm, she has tattooed up until now. Now, you've just never had a more humbling experience than realizing that somebody tattooed your words onto their arm, right? And it's big, John. It's like the whole forearm says up until now, really big. Like she can't miss it on any given day. She's going to see it all the time. So this phrase is so powerful, but it's the one that everybody grabs hold of, right? Because it's so powerful. But the real power in the 9 little words to change your results comes in making it all the way through the other 2 phrases, right?
Yeah. So first of all, great comments there. And I'll say to everyone listening, what you often say, Lynn, on our morning stretch calls, listen with fresh ears tonight. Because again, people are familiar with Lynn and the book, but you know, she just said some amazing things, that those 3 little words really do 3 big word things. Number one, interrupt the pattern. And I had the opportunity years ago to attend some live events with Tony Robbins. He is the master at interrupting because he understands he cannot help someone shift without first creating an interruption to what they're used to doing, their habitual thoughts. And he'll do anything to interrupt somebody. I mean, he is the most outrageous person I've ever seen. So number one, those 3 words, interrupt old patterns. And then you said acknowledge and imply. So acknowledging is simply saying, okay, it has been this way, because Tony Robbins also says, see it the way it is. Okay, it is this way, but then make it better. See it better and make it better. So, and then you said it implies you can make it better. So those words are powerful. So then, Lynn, in chapter 4, you get to the next 3 words, I am willing. And you give the examples here. I'm willing to do my taxes early this year. I'm willing to learn about the FAFSA requirements in January. I'm willing to go to financial aid workshops with my daughter. I'm willing to learn all we can learn about the process. I'm willing to visit campuses with my daughter. I'm willing to be a partner with my daughter and my husband in this process. I'm willing to expect fantastic outcomes. And so that takes us into that second phase. So talk for a minute about the I am willing and the power of those 3 words.
So I am willing adds action to affirmation. So if we are affirming the good that we want to create, the good that we are willing to expect, right? Then what are we darn well willing to do about it, right? So it adds action to the power of affirmation. And when I say I am willing, it is almost never one thing. It is a bullet point list, just like John just read in the book. It's this list. But one thing that's always in that list for me is I am willing to think differently. I am willing to see it differently. One of the things you said in the few of the list that you read from the book was, I am willing to remember that my husband and my daughter are partners with me in this. I quit thinking I had to do it all. It took the pressure off when I realized I didn't have to fix this. It wasn't just my responsibility. I all of a sudden felt better. Now, nobody else was going to do the taxes early, or probably nobody else is going to really figure out FAFSA, right? Because it's tied together. But I also knew the decisions weren't mine to make by myself and all of that. And so if we can always use I am willing to remember that one of the first things we have to do is be willing to shift our perspective, to see it differently, think about it differently, and then say, what am I going to do about it? I am willing, and then put some action to the affirmation, because that's transformative, right? We all know our Legal Shield business doesn't get better unless we, by golly, do something about it, right? It's activity that makes our business different. And so if we're willing to, shift our mindset and then shift our activity to match it, now we're on to something.
Well, that's great. And I want everyone on here to be ready, because we're going to take you all through this. But Lynn, then in the book, you talk about creative brainstorming, the thought, what could I do to lead toward that list of what am I willing to do? What could I do? And you list 20 things here, just as kind of an example. And the first one you put, you could beg for mercy from the financial aid office. Now, that's probably not what you did, but the value of that is it opened up your mind to, well, what is possible? Mm-hmm. You might come up with things that are immoral, illegal, but you're, again, not that you'd act on them, but you're opening your mind to all kinds of possibilities. So that's so important. So then when you, and I know in my case the other day, contemplating, okay, up until now, I've not been platinum consistently. I've been platinum, but not consistently. And so I thought, okay, well, what am I willing to do? And as I think about my answers, and really in Legal Shield, we get answers like finding more people to talk to, expanding my list, and being intentional about that, talking to more people, inviting more people, following up more frequently, tracking more regularly, being more consistent, talking to my spouse or my kids about the journey I'm on, inviting them into it, reading every day, growing myself, thinking differently. I mean, the list is expansive. And then, Lynn, you get to that, okay, so a person's gotten clear on up until now, I fill in the blank, and now I'm willing to fill in multiple blanks. And then the real power that I want you to talk about, these 3 words, and then we'll put everyone kind of into workshop here. No matter what.
So no matter what, it's got to be firm. We're not talking about any mamby-pamby kind of no matter what. We are talking about no matter flipping what, right? You have to say it to yourself like you are serious. You have to mean this. And what we do when we do that is we engage 2 of our really important mental faculties. They are the mental faculty of decision, the power to decide for something, and the power of faith. And I don't mean religious faith. I mean the ability to believe in a result you can't see yet, right? And so when we say no matter what, we are deciding for the I am willing items, right? We are deciding, and when we decide for something, we are cutting away all the other things that can't be. When I decided for this teal colored wrap today, I cut away the possibility of my periwinkle blue one, right? So it is absolutely, decisions are firm. They have dedication and commitment. And that is just what they are. If they don't have those elements, they aren't decisions. And then faith allows us to imagine a result that we can't see the evidence of yet and believe in it. And the power of belief, if you haven't read the old book, The Magic of Believing, you can get it free on YouTube and listen to it. It's by Claude
Bristol.
Thank you, Bristol. I have it over here somewhere. I was trying to pull it out. Here it is. The Magic of Believing by Claude Bristol. It is a fabulous book, and it is all about this power of our own belief, right? And so that's that. And I want to go back just for a second quickly, because I know we don't want to get stuck on this, but I have to say that technique about creative brainstorming that you mentioned, John, is so important. And I don't talk about it a lot. I've probably only said it in front of Legal Shield people once. And it is a powerful technique when you're feeling stuck, when you just can't imagine, like you said, John, earlier, that ability to imagine outside of what you've already thought of, when you're just like, I'd be willing, but I can't think of anything. Go back into 9 Little Words and read the section on creative brainstorming, and just put it to work, because it is powerful, so powerful. I have a fun story about that that I'll tell some other time when we have more time.
All right. Well, fantastic. And I know, you're talking about faith, and if you can make a decision in advance. I mean, years ago with my wife, I made a decision in advance to be faithful, because life has its temptations and challenges. And I know you gave the example of making a decision to quit smoking. You got
Right.
some news, and you just thought, you know what, you got medical news that, hey, if I stay on this path, it won't be healthy. And you talk about that in the book. So
Yep.
This is fabulous. So, okay, so up until now, powerfully interrupts a pattern. I am willing leads to real action, and no matter what, needs to be firm. And that's a faithful decision. So now, Lynn, let's do this. We've got about 40 people on. People have been thinking, I'm sure, about some areas where they're thinking, well, up until now, fill in the blank. So let's have everybody, we'll take a minute. Everybody come up with one thing where you're feeling like up until now, and fill in that blank. And then, Lynn, what we'll do, if you're good with this, is we'll ask for a volunteer. And maybe you can workshop them through what the steps would be. And folks, we might go a little bit over, because that's how workshops go. So we'll be back to you in about 30 seconds now. By the way, you can turn your cameras on now too, so we can see you thinking. I see Bob, I see Lee, I see Melvin, I see Ken.
I see Michelle.
I see Brenda, Chris, Prince.
The host has
Ebony.
disabled my camera, Robert.
Oh, because you left it on. I'll undo it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of folks, and so let's do this. If you've come up with one thing that's an up until now for you, just wave so we can see how many have come up with one. It's hard with your cameras off, folks, but okay. So Lynn, I'm going to turn it over to you to ask for a volunteer and kind of work through for, let's say 8 to 10 minutes this process.
Yeah, I saw Dani Goden's hand up. I'm gonna make her sit up.
Yeah, make me sit up. Up until now, I have not made executive director.
And how does it feel, Dani, when you say that? When you say, what's the thought behind it before you add up until now? what do you really like? How do you say it to yourself when you say it before you put up until now with it?
I have not made executive director.
But is it matter of fact like that? Or is it, is there any judgment in it towards yourself? Is there a why not? Is there a,
Mm,
you know, this is deep, y'all, because you kind of have to dig a little. You have to say, like, of course it's a matter of fact thing, right? It's a fact. You have, like, it's a fact I've never made platinum or whatever, right? Obviously. But you know, what's the thought it brings up about why?
a lot of it was definite lack of activity.
So,
There was definitely a big reason why.
so, um, so would you say I haven't made executive director because I just wasn't consistent in my activity?
I wouldn't say I wasn't consistent. I wasn't doing enough of it.
Okay, there you go. So, and why not? Is there a thought behind that is about you, about your choices?
I think a lot of it at the time was I was relying on my husband's income.
Ah, right. So could it be like, I didn't, I haven't taken my business seriously because I was safe financially or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, so I haven't taken my business seriously, and the activity seriously because I felt, you know, I didn't have to, right? I was safe financially. So now, how does it feel when you think about that, when you say that to yourself?
It feels silly.
Yeah. And it's definitely a result you want to change, right?
Yes.
Yes. So now give it an up until now.
Up until now, I don't know. I lost
Up
my train
until
of thought.
now, I haven't hit executive director because I wasn't, you know, taking it serious, taking my activity seriously enough. Right? Up until
Yes.
now.
Yes.
Okay. So now give it an I am willing. What are you willing to do about it? And this should be a list.
Right. I am willing to make more phone calls. I am willing to work with my team more. I am willing to stop thinking that I'm safe with my husband's income, because it is not a safe place. There's
do things that make you uncomfortable.
I'm willing to do things that make me feel uncomfortable, as my husband just said.
And what about something like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is there an element to this that is, I am willing to see myself as the breadwinner of my own life?
Yeah, that would be something. Yes, absolutely.
Right. I can relate to that a little bit. So I am willing to, you know, all the activity, right? Make more phone calls, work with your team more. I'm willing to focus on recruiting more of a team so that I have more help to get to executive director, right? All the things, right? There's a whole list of the obvious activities that will help you get there, right? Mr. Drennan and Mr. Halligan teach us those all the time. But when this gets really powerful is when you dig enough to get at the things that are uniquely yours that are holding you back, right? Like
Yes.
a thought around safety, or a thought around not seeing yourself as the breadwinner, and just seeing yourself as, you know, one of those ladies of justice core values is take ownership and create your legacy and own your seat at the table, or as I like to say, just own the darn table. So all of those things, right, are mindset things that I think sometimes we're in a position that holds us back from having those mindsets, right? And so digging at those. Okay, and then, you know, it's time to commit. So let's hear those last three words.
I just drew a blank.
It's okay.
I'm willing to
No
commit.
matter what.
What? No matter what.
No matter what. And so John talked about, you know, making his decision in advance. When he got married, he made a decision that he was just always going to be faithful. When I quit smoking, I made a decision in advance of the cravings, in advance of gaining weight, in advance of like all the stuff that makes you, you know, whatever stress came up. I made a decision in advance. In that moment, I became Lynn, the lifelong non-smoker. So you have to become, in the moment that you say, no matter freaking what, you have to become Dani Goeden, the woman who nothing will stop her from getting to executive director.
Yes. No matter what.
No matter what. No matter flipping what, woman. That's it. I love it.
No matter what.
Good. Thank you, Dani, for being willing to do that with all of us.
Yes. Sorry, I
And-
drew some blanks.
And Lynn and Dani, and first of all, Dani, my guess is if we jumped into your household, Tim's there, your husband, you've got kids, they're maybe watching a movie, you've got a lot of stuff going on. And for everybody tonight, you know, it's not like we said, be ready, we're going to do this, but now we've done it. And everybody on here, you know the steps, and that first, up until now, that's easy. We've all got those. But I hope you caught what Lynn said in pursuing with Dani. What are the thoughts, or what's the energy, or what are the feelings invoked by that up until now as you say it, as you think about it? Because Lynn, I think those thoughts and feelings could be, I'm not good enough, or I'm beating myself up, or, you know, I've let people down, or I can do better. There's all kinds of energies that can come up. And that's not only fine, it's good, because that starts the process. And Lynn, as you were doing that with Dani, I'm thinking that I am willing, that going through that workshop's really important. To me, it can't be 3 or 4 things. I think the workshop, the creative dream. Brainstorming, thank you.
Creative brainstorming, yeah.
I mean, that's something I think we could take hours on to really get creative. What else could I do? What else could I do? What else could I do? And I learned from Tony Robbins years ago, you know, what has to happen? What else could I do? And then if you think, well, I don't know what else. Well, if you did know, what would it be? What else? If you knew something else, what would that be? And really expand. Because to me, Lynn, we've all got this paradigm bubble, and we got to burst it, or we'll stay where we are. And so that I am willing is really, really powerful. And then the no matter what, said with conviction, decided, that's necessary. So I hope everyone here will come off this Zoom and commit to one up until now, and really take yourself through that I am willing process, and come up with a core group of things you have decided you're willing to do, and then make that no matter what decision. And here's one thing, and Lynn, you and I have talked about this. It's amazing how frequently we see someone make decisions around Legal Shield, whether it's to get started or to plant a flag in the ground and say, I'm going to do something. And then the universe seems to challenge that to find out, are you serious or just kidding around? Sometimes the universe will show you things like a broken bone, a lost job, a sick child, where you kind of feel like, oh, I can't do this now. The timing's bad. The fact is, we all go through that stuff. Or sometimes the universe shows up with stuff like, oh, that $10,000 I wasn't expecting showed up. Hey, I just got a job increase. Hey, the person that I wanted to marry just proposed. You know, something good can happen that can also challenge the decision. We see that all the time. So you can almost expect that. But Lynn, then the other thing we see is once we move through that, and that usually can happen fast, the universe seems to line up and conspire on our behalf to help us get what we commit to. And you and I have talked about that many times, and we see that so many times. And Dani, you were a great example of that in June when you made that firm decision, and all kinds of things lined up for you. And it's been happening ever since, even though you've had challenges, because you and I have talked about your challenges. So great job, Lynn. You should be talking more than me. I'm sorry, but I'm really excited about the book and this topic. Anything else you'd like to add before we?
So because we've talked about this creative brainstorming, I'm going to take 3 minutes to tell a quick story, because I want people to really understand how powerful this is for what you can do with it. Okay. So if you're thinking of just like when you make your I am willing list, if it's just an obvious list of things that you already knew you knew to do, it's time to pull out the creative brainstorming. So once upon a time, there was a man who owned the barber shop in a little town, in a rural American town. And his barbershop, it was the third generation in his family of owning the barbershop in this town. His dad had owned it, his granddad had owned it, and it was more than the barbershop. It was the hub of the community. There was a pool table in the back, right? All the farmers came to town on Saturday for market, and they all ended up at the barbershop to, swap stories and get all the news. And his oldest son went off to college, first person in his family to go to college, and he came home for spring break. And he could tell his dad, who was normally this light of the party, something was wrong. And so the night before he went back to school, he asked his dad, "What's wrong, Dad? I can just tell." And he said, "Son, I didn't want to worry you. I didn't want to tell you, but I think we're going to lose the barbershop. And it just breaks my heart that this third generation business is going under on my watch. I've just tried everything." And what had happened was, this was like the late 70s. Remember when, those of us who are old enough, remember when blow dryers were a new thing? And so all of a sudden, one of those chain places had moved in on the edge of town, like a Smart Clips or whatever. And he said, "I just can't compete with $6 haircuts. Like, they're out there, everybody's flocking out there, nobody's coming here." He said, I've advertised in the paper, I've done this, I've done that, all the obvious things. He had done them, he had tried them. And his son said, "Dad, I learned this new technique at school. Will you do it with me?" He said, "Well, I'll do it with you, but I've tried everything." He said, "Okay, we're going to get out a clean sheet of paper and we're going to write down 20 ideas, and we're not going to judge them. We're not going to question them. We're not going to say, 'Oh, but that's illegal.' We're not going to say, 'Oh, that'll never work,' or whatever. We're just going to write them down, and we're going to brainstorm till we have at least 20 ideas." So he said, "Well, I've thought of everything. And he's like, "Dad, you said you do it, just do it." So they start writing, and the first thing he says is, "We could advertise." And his dad said, he said, "Nope, we're not going to do that, Dad. We're just going to write down these things." So they did it. Then they circled the few that they kind of thought were interesting, and they talked about it a little bit, and they decided on one, and the kid went back to school the next day. And 6 weeks later, he came home for summer break. And he saw his dad, and he was his old self. He was radiant. He was the life of the party. The barbershop was packed with people. "Dad, what happened?" He said, "Son, that idea you had, that was just great. I put up that sign that said, 'We fix $6 haircuts,' and that was all it took." Right? So put a note on your computer, "Fix $6 haircuts," right? Think beyond whatever it is you've done. Open up your sight lines, as Patty would say, to just see it new, see it differently. Think beyond whatever it is you think is holding you back. And that creative brainstorming technique will help you do it.
Oh, that was so good, Lynn. And I think that could also be done with a workout partner, two people coming and brainstorming
Yes,
with each other,
absolutely.
like the example you gave. So that was great, Lynn. Thank you so much. And folks, everyone, reminders for tomorrow at 8 a.m. tomorrow, we've got, and that's Eastern time, our stretch call. And Susan Comer is going to lead that tomorrow morning. And then we've got our 2 Zooms tomorrow at 12:30 and then at 8 p.m. All this information's on our calendar at successpartnerscalendar.com. You know, you might know that, but do your team members know? They can go to the calendar and get all this information. And then finally, oh yeah, we're going to close with a short training video here. So with that, Lynn, thank you. Everyone give Lynn a hand. And Mr. Steve Beck, come on in with the video. Good night, everyone.
You're not a procrastinator. You have a habit of procrastinating. Big difference. Because if it's a habit, I can teach you to use science to break it. So let's talk a little bit about procrastination. Who in here struggles with procrastination? Yeah, and the rest of you that aren't raising your hand are just procrastinating on doing it, aren't you? I know. You see, I always thought procrastination had to do with the thing I was procrastinating around, right? Like that procrastination has something to do with work. Believe it or not, procrastination has nothing to do with your work. Procrastination is a form of stress relief. Let me explain this. So let's say that you've got some stuff going on in your life, and heck, who doesn't have stuff going on in your life? Maybe you're fighting with your significant other. Maybe mom's or dad's health is failing and it's really, really upsetting you. Maybe you've got some financial stuff. You put too much of your savings into Bitcoin, and now that that's crashed, you're stressed out about it, right? And so you go into work, and when you get into work, you got stuff to do. You kind of walk in and you got this big stress ball that subconsciously is hanging over your head. And so you walk in and you sit down, and you know you got 13 phone calls you need to make. And you also know that you've been chickening out, you've been making easy calls, and there's a bunch of CIOs or other people that are higher level that you haven't been calling. And so as you sit down to do it, and you got the stress on your shoulders, your brain it starts to go, wait a minute, well, you want me to make a call to somebody that I'm scared to make? Absolutely not. I'm so stressed out about, can we just watch some cat videos for a minute? And next thing you know, an hour's gone by. And then, of course, what do? You beat yourself up. So the only way that you can break this habit, and that's an important word for you to hear, you're not a procrastinator. You have a habit of procrastinating. Big difference. Because if it's a habit, I can teach you to use science to break it. You see, all habits have 3 parts. There's a trigger, and in the case of procrastination, the trigger's always stress. Then there's a pattern you repeat, and in the case of procrastination, it is to avoid doing something. And then there's a reward. You get a little stress relief. The only way to break a habit, you guys, is not to deal with the triggers. You're never